Terry.
Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for our March 9th work session. Up first today, we have a North Point Development Hagerstown Logistics Center update with Jill and representatives from North Point.
Yeah. Good afternoon, and it's my pleasure to introduce North Point representatives today. And before I do that, I'd like to recognize partners on the project. So I know many of them would have come today for this update presentation, but many are watching via our stream. So I want to recognize Washington County's partnership in this project, as well as the state of Maryland. And I'd like to introduce Brent Miles, who is Chief Marketing Officer and one of the founding partners of North Point, and his colleague, Rich Goodman, who is our project manager on site for the construction, who joined us in January, taking over from Jeremy Michaels. So I'm going to give up my seat to Rich, and I'll turn it over to Brent and Rich.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. This was a long time coming. It's a partnership that we had. I know there's a couple of new faces. You haven't met me before, but again, I'm Brent Miles. I'm one of the founders and owners of North Point. We're based in Kansas City, and obviously we do this across the country. You have a little presentation here that we can go through for, again, just to remind everyone kind of how we got here. But we're the largest privately held industrial landlord in the U.S. and we have been investing in Pennsylvania for about the last 5 or 6 years. And I just saw we crossed over the $2 billion mark that we've invested in Pennsylvania. And with that, I had always been told that Maryland was not open for business. Many of you may not know that, but I was been told stay away from Maryland, don't go to Maryland, why would you look in Maryland? And we found this site, and this site looked really interesting to us and reached out. And I tell this across the country, it's not just because you're my audience here today. Myself and my business partner, Nathaniel Hagedorn, we flew in for our first meeting in the city, county, state. I think there was 25 to 30 people here to welcome us and tell us, we want your investment, we want you to invest here and create jobs. And not just because I'm sitting in front of you, I do this every day of my life. I've never seen anything like what I saw that day. And I thought my perceptions and information, admittedly, were wrong. We were wrong. This is a place that we should invest in. This is a place that we should come. It's an old saying, capital goes where capital's welcome, and I will tell you, we walked out of that meeting that day saying we want to invest a lot of capital in Maryland and in Hagerstown and in Washington County. Now, we had this small little road that we had to rebuild, so we had to figure that out. Small little stumbling block that we had to get over. But I will tell you, the attitude, the can-do attitude, the roll up the sleeves, let's get to work and let's create jobs. Absolutely. It wasn't just the first date. The marriage went really, really well. So now we get to celebrate our anniversary a little bit, keeping with the metaphor. So if you haven't noticed, we've been a little busy. We've been a little busy building our buildings. Rich on our team, he's out of our Cincinnati office. Rich and Jeremy both have just done a tremendous job in actually what I say, actually fulfilling the promises that I make. So we're going to walk you through this a little bit. Jill, I assume, do you want me to do this, or who? Does that work? Okay. So there's a building that Rich is trying to get a roof on and get fully built. So as I said, we're the largest privately held landlord. I won't take much of your time. This isn't about us today. This is about thanking you. But just know, for those of that are new, we have a partnership here with Northwestern Mutual. Many of you may not know that. Northwestern Mutual is the gold standard of investment-grade industrial buildings. They're our financial partner on this. If you get Northwestern Mutual to give you the amount of money that they gave us to build this project, it is It is a gold standard. It is the gold ribbon of investment grade quality. So they have someone who checks the checker who checks us. So nothing is skipped in construction, every inspection that Rich has to put up with, but these are buildings that are built for the next 30 to 50 years. This isn't something that's a flash in the pan for 5 or 10 years. This is a long-term investment because they're investing people's life insurance money, right? They're investing somebody's life insurance money into this investment. So it's you don't get Northwestern everywhere that we go. This is one that we convinced them, and we told them that story of that first meeting. That's a really big deal to somebody like a Northwestern Mutual. Again, for those of you who don't know, we lease to companies all over the country. As I say, if you buy it on your phone or if you have it in a grocery store or buy it in a store, it probably comes out of one of our buildings somewhere across the U.S. We are in the process of building 4 buildings. They're in varying stages if you've been by the site of where those four buildings are today. Buildings 1, 2, and 3 are, 1 and 3 are obviously have progressed really well. 2 we're about to sign our lease on, right, Rich?
Yep.
This week, hopefully this week. So we think we have another big announcement coming there. And then we were authorized with Northwestern Mutual. We'll be starting on building 4 here shortly. So that will deliver this calendar year. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. We, like I said, to invest the amount of money that we have, we're at $168 million to date. No matter where I go in the country, $168 million is a lot of money. We're proud that we've invested $170 million into your community. Again, if you haven't been by the site, it's transformed a lot since you last saw us. Unfortunately, we couldn't be here to give you more updates, COVID and things. I want you to know that Jill and myself and our team, we communicate with your team all the time, and those are always very positive interactions. But I'm really proud of how the park has come and progressed, and the construction just looks great. You took a risk with us. I think it was a calculated risk, but at the end of the day, you did take a risk to say, is North Point the right partner for us? And that risk that you took had a clawback, which we'll talk about, but that risk that you took was a partnership in which you invested money into infrastructure. Now, I did argue that that road was going to have to be rebuilt at some point. It was not built, in my opinion, my words, correctly, way back when, and we don't have to open that Pandora's box again, but it was going to, its useful life was almost over. Now, our project was going to speed up the end of its useful life, but the state and the county and the city all stepped up as partners, right, to rebuild Basil Boulevard. And you said, if you don't perform, we're counting on you to produce taxes and jobs. If you don't perform, you owe us, which I told Rich was gonna come out of his pay, which would have taken a very long time. What you said was, we're going to put some clawbacks in that agreement. And that agreement says, if you don't build these by a certain date, release them by a certain date, then you owe us. And so I don't think we sandbagged. I think we actually gave what we thought was the market of how long it would take us to do this. And as I would say, we've ripped the rim off the backboard. We went way faster than we expected. It turned out way better than we expected. The caliber of tenants that we have turned out better than even we expected. So we caught lightning in a bottle already 3 times, and I think we're gonna catch it a 4th time here. So if you see here, this is what we promised you and where we're at. We're actually 7 to 8 months ahead on what we call phase 1, and we're actually 3 years ahead of schedule on phase 2. This only helps you because those dollars are gonna come in faster, right? And that repayment and that return on investment's gonna happen even faster for everybody. So again, this is meant to say thank you. Thank you to everybody that believed in the project and believed in us. You didn't know us. This was our first interaction with you. Obviously, we had a pretty big track record that you could see, and we had a lot of testimonials. I know your group vetted us very well of, do they actually do what they say they're going to do, promises made, promises kept, and it's fun for me to sit here today and say, thank you. You believed in us. We performed, so we did our part. But in the development world, there's a lot of promises made that aren't kept. We kept our promise, and I think, in my opinion, we exceeded our promise. And that's rewarding. So I won't take much more of your time to answer any questions that you have, but first and foremost, thank you.
I definitely don't have any questions, but thank you guys. I mean, this has just been incredible to watch. Driving down Faisal Boulevard is, it looks like Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings right now.
As I say, just Rich sprinkles some water and up pops a building. If you
Yeah.
don't come by for a couple weeks, it looks a lot different. So
Yes,
pretty
been-
incredible.
it's been incredible to watch.
Yeah.
I was saying before we started, I guess they were air conditioning and heating units that had to be lifted by helicopter up onto the roof.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm out at work and I keep hearing this helicopter like for hours.
Would you think this
know.
was the time that they're finally?
God
gonna
only
get you?
knew what was going on, so, you know, I went to go check, and, I'm telling you, I have seen a lot of amazing things in my lifetime. The speed at which he would pick those up and get those placed, and then back down to get another one, I was like, oh my Lord, I mean, how do you do that? But that guy was, man, he
Yeah.
was a magician, I'm telling you.
It's hard for us to not, it's really not intended to sound pompous or cocky or something like that. But when you go into a community that hasn't experienced something like we've done or do, we sort of joke when we walk out, like, you know, they have no idea what they're going to see. Just because you hadn't really seen
It's pretty
something
amazing, yeah,
that we
what
do,
we've
right?
seen out there. And I go by it 3 times a day, so it's easy for me
Yeah.
to see the progress.
Yeah, we knew that your trips, that was part of our argument on the Basil Boulevard rebuild. We knew how many times you were going by.
You know,
I mean, to be able to have worked with you since the beginning, it's been a real joy. I know
Yeah.
that you're just as easy to work with as you say that we are, so it's been a real treat. So
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for your investment and your belief in our city and
Yeah.
our county.
Yeah, I won't say too much more, but trust us, we like to come back where things went really well. And you are on the top of our list of how we can invest more money here. We're under contract on a couple sites that we hope really work out, and we think they will work out. But we are raving fans of you. And unfortunately, sometimes we get a mayor who we're a raving fan of, or a council. But once it gets down a level or 5, you might not get that same service, or you might not get that same core values or beliefs from top to bottom throughout the organizations. We have seen that same attitude. It isn't just leadership, it is down through everyone, and that's not common. And it's not common in government, unfortunately. And we've experienced it. We give you a 10 out of 10. It's just, we haven't really had an experience like we've had with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Jill, and your team.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a huge reflection on you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. So if there's any other questions, if something that you had, you know, you don't want to bring up in others, in front of other people, or you say, I'd really like to get some more updates, and we can send you drone photos. We shoot a lot of drone and photos for our investors at Northwestern Mutual. You know, we're happy to communicate with you as early and as often, and hopefully, in the next 6 months, we're past all this stuff, and we can get out and we can have some celebration of the tenants and the jobs, and talk more openly about that. But it's coming. We're in very good shape here. So thank you again for having us. and
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for believing in us, okay?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
take care.
All right, up next, 2020 Land Management Code update.
Take care, everyone.
Take care.
See you, Frank.
Thank you.
I'll just come up here so there's a body in the room, but Steve will be doing the presentation through Zoom.
Can I be heard? Hello? Can I be heard? Hello?
Can you hear me now?
Hello?
Steve, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. Can you see me?
No.
No.
Say your name.
Maybe that's such a good thing. Okay. Hey, before we get started, I just wanted to mention about the North Point project. The last two site plans for Buildings 2 and Building 4 were submitted in the last part of January and the first few days of February. And if everything goes according to plan, I expect to have them both in front of the Planning Commission on March 31st. Less than 60 days. Best care anywhere, just so everybody knows.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Moving on to what we're here for today, you had your public hearing for the 2020 package of land management code amendments. There was no testimony taken at the hearing. Nobody signed up to testify other than Mr. Castillo. He had problems logging in. We let him know afterwards that he had a 10-day window to submit written materials. He did not do so, and nor did we get any from anybody else. So we have no public testimony. There I am.
There you go.
So, at this point, we have no testimony to go over. At the meeting, Councilmember Alshire mentioned that he had some questions or concerns about 5 or so items. He said he would follow up with me with an email, which he did. He and I corresponded back and forth. I think I answered most of his questions. There's probably 1 or 2 items that he's going to want to discuss amongst you all that he has concerns with. But some of them, I believe, he will agree with me, got pretty much satisfied by our interaction. So with that, I guess I open it up to you all to discuss and give us direction on where you want to, how you want to move on this.
Well, I mean, if nobody else has any issues, I'm happy to go first. I had raised a question about item A3 on page 3, which is a change in requirements for afforestation, reforestation process. And I believe I understood you to say that even though this change is being put in place, it's not moving this up on the scale of mitigation items that you can utilize to satisfy your FRO requirements.
That is correct. It's considered a path of last resort.
Got you. Okay, and I'm good with that. I just didn't want to read it in the context that this is sort of like an option we're making favorably available.
We've only used it 3 or 4 times in the last 18 years.
Okay. The second item that I still have an issue with is on page 5. It is adding a new use under the zoning chart for permitted and special exception uses. It says gambling establishments as defined, permitted, regulated, and licensed by the state of Maryland, including casinos, sports betting parlors, and similar facilities. And so, and then it lists both are going to be permitted uses in the CCMU, which is the city center mixed use, correct?
Yes.
And the commercial general. And for me, I don't have an issue so much, well, I have 2 issues. One is, it says licensed by the state, but I know that the state has yet to define what these places are going to be. And so we're already going to make them permitted uses without an awareness of what the state's going to say they're going to be. And I think it gets back to a conversation we had as a council a few weeks back, because I don't have so much of an issue with sports betting parlors, as I guess I envision them in my mind right now, because they're associated typically with other establishments like the stadium. However, I do have a different opinion if what is going to be permitted use, and I'd be as frank as possible, if what we're gonna look to do is allow something like the Charlestown casinos to be placed in downtown. I just don't know that I share the vision to have that type of facility in our urban core. I don't have an issue with you know, I guess they're considered sports-oriented or sort of off betting establishments, but there's no picture for me to understand what that means, what a gambling establishment is, what a sports betting parlor is, and certainly not what a similar facility is, because that's a clearly undefined term. You know, and it's funny, I was on my way up here and I said, hey, I was getting a tea right down here at the market, and I said, hey, you guys, do you sell, you know, scratch-offs and tickets? And she said, no, we don't want that kind of mess. And I was like, you know, the constant, and so I guess I just ask what the immediacy is of going ahead and adding these to our code and making them permitted without any sort of definition of what that means, before the state defines what it means. And so I'm just not there. Somebody have to show me pictures of what a sports betting parlor is. Somebody would have to assure me that what we're not gonna end up with is frankly, a casino in downtown. And there you may have 5 other people in this room that, you know, that support that you know, type of use in that sort of framework than I envision it, but I'm just, I think that there are much better things that we could have in our downtown that aren't of that nature, that don't require the level of service from the city that I could envision happening if they were to be constructed and implemented. So that's my concern on that one.
Do you guys
Would
have any?
you like a
similar
response
questions?
on that, or some additional information, or how would
Yeah, I
you
mean,
like to proceed?
for me, I definitely want to understand what a sports betting parlor is, because I feel like I wouldn't care about that. I feel like I'd be okay with it. And I don't know how to say, except I just don't know enough about what it looks like. I'm sure you got examples of these existing elsewhere that are perfectly fine. But I do know what a casino, you know what I mean? I've been to those in Atlantic City. I've been up to Rocky Gap. I've been down to Charlestown. So I do know what that is as well. And I just think that there is a clear difference in how they function and the impact of that functionality on the urban core. So.
Let me offer this to the rest of the body. In our conversation, I agreed with Kristen that time is not of the essence on this. So if you all want to hold off on this particular item until a separate text amendment down the road, or maybe next year's package after this fleshes out more, there's no loss to the city that I can see in the short term. We put it in the package simply because we do this typically once a year, and we knew it was on the horizon, so we thought we would try to address it in general. And the issue of zoning on something like this, as far as all of the other issues that may come along with it, is a relatively simple thing. Where do you want it? And the thought is since it generates tourism, it should be in the downtown or in our CG. That's the mindset that we as staff and the planning commission had in offering this, and just trying to get ahead of it and getting it on the books. But as Kristen mentions, if you all want to hold off on this, there's no loss to the city if you want to hold this particular provision out and move forward without it.
And when you say it generates tourism, again, I guess I have to go back to what the functional appearance, what the functional context and construct of them are, because they are clearly different things. They function in different ways. And I guess, you know, I have to envision, okay, here's what we intend to do right now by adopting this, and I get that. But then I think, okay, what does that mean 20 years from now? and I used this example with Scott just a bit ago, okay, I understand what a sports betting parlor is, I understand how it functions, but I also understand that that is becoming a much more virtual commodity. You get on, and you get to do it, and so now you've got this functionally built space for this approvable purpose. Then does that mean 15 years from now, when the sports betting parlor isn't of the construct that we had envisioned it being, you know, when we approved it, does it then become, does the necessity then arise that it becomes, that it needs to become something else to exist? I.e., does a sports betting parlor turn into a casino over time? And I guess that's, you know, and I don't know, maybe I'm being too conservative, socially conservative about this in general, but I don't envision that being the theme of what I want our downtown tourism to be associated and driven by.
Well, I definitely think we have
So-
to table it. I don't think that now, I think that not putting it in this package, like Steve had said, is probably, timing's off.
Do you guys share the same concern? Do you want to remove it from this package, or?
I don't
Do
have
not
the
have a
concerns
concern.
that Kristen has, but again, I will say that I have to agree with him that the state hasn't defined yet exactly what this is gonna be like. And I'm fine with holding off until we get more clarification of that, when it comes to the betting parlors.
Well, especially because the model, just like Kristen said, is going to more of a virtual sports betting type of thing, so, you know, could be a,
Yeah, I have no problem holding off
yeah, I'm okay with that.
until we figure it out. Until smarter people than us figure it out.
Okay.
I was fine with the item I asked you on page 6. Page 8, and I realize this is an existing condition, and I guess I'm seeking clarity because you made some adjustments here. But on page 8:1, it says, such accessory garage or building shall not be used as a dwelling or for sleeping purposes. And I guess my only question is, and I know this is an additional item to sort of this update, but when I read that, the way that I read it is somebody couldn't have a she shed or a man cave and take a nap there if they felt like it. And I guess when I read it, I sort of ended it with dwelling. In other words, I get what we're doing. We don't want somebody to use a garage as a dwelling unit, period. But to go further and say, or for sleeping purposes, I think the assumption is you mean for sleeping purposes of a of a person that doesn't reside there, i.e. you can't rent it out. But I'm assuming that doesn't mean somebody can't, I don't know, have a sleeping area in their garage if they feel like it.
The concern was that they shouldn't become a bedroom.
Right.
Either for a permanent resident of the property, all the bedrooms should be in the main house. And
agree with that.
also turn into like a room that you rent out, like a Airbnb kind of situation where it's out in the backyard. Because also when people start sleeping in them, then all of a sudden amenities start creeping in, and before you know it, there's a bona fide dwelling unit there that flew under all the permitting radars and all. That's where that's from.
I get it. And I think it's gonna happen either way, to some degree.
Well, like if Shelley would ever get her she shed built
Oh
at
my
her
gosh,
place
are you kidding me right now?
and
Steve,
Steven wanted to put a hammock there in case she was out gardening and wanted to just like take a nap when it's a nice breezy day, she should be able to do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
probably
As a
not.
practical matter, one of the things that's
I mean, we
important
did
is
that
that you have faith in your staff to make reasonable in-the-field inspection interpretations. If somebody's taking a nap in their she shed, is our staff going to issue them a violation notice over that? No. It's a practical matter, no.
Well, you gotta have one
So
first.
Shelley doesn't have to worry.
I got it.
Oh my gosh, I can't.
Item 9, and I've expressed this before, I'm never comfortable with adopting things that are that provide the ability for staff to make a determination. In other words, we have a Board of Zoning Appeals, and if someone doesn't feel that the standards which are set can meet what they're trying to do, I think having staff sort of to alter those unilaterally, I get the intentions are good, but the reality is this: if I own a property and let's say it has, an efficiency unit and I was at, 370, and you say, well, yeah, you got a hallway up here, that's good. And then somebody else has one and let's say it's 380 and you say, no, that's no good. I've never been a fan of a process whereby you are deviating from the standards you set in a manner that you'll are provided the opportunity to deviate as long as you determine it to be minor, and certainly not in the context where you would do so, you know what I mean, for this one because it's an 8-unit place, but not this one because it's 12 units, and maybe that one over there because that neighborhood, its parking's okay, and so you can deviate. I just think that you get into gray area where you create that opportunity where somebody that feels aggrieved by your decision not to say yes to theirs, but say yes to somebody else's, could say, well, you said yes to them because you like them better, et cetera, et cetera. And you proposed, that 15% deviation. I think that's a reasonable compromise because it at least sets sort of a standard to say, I'm not gonna go past this. And I also like that you pointed out that you would take into consideration the shared space of the area as part of it. If it doesn't have those two things, again, this is just me, but I'm not in favor of that because I think it opens us up to legal challenge from somebody that's aggrieved by your decision that one person's minor thing is not another person's minor thing.
Could I offer a little context to the body on that one? In Kristen's and my conversations about this, I gave him some background. What we've run into is a situation where, especially in our downtown area, with all the interest that we're receiving in renovating and revitalizing buildings, and now for residential uses, that we're dealing with existing building envelopes, we're dealing with existing not party walls, but structural load-bearing walls, which can't be moved, interior corridors, et cetera, which create difficulties sometimes in applying these hard and fast standards of 400, 500, 650, et cetera. So as a result, in one case, what we did is that if one unit was a few square feet under, and there was another unit that's going into the building that was over their minimum, we just kind of prorated it out, because one of our concerns would be is that we have a project that goes on in our downtown that everybody wants, let's say it's high-end residential, whatever, and everybody thinks it's a great idea, and then we run into these situations. If I have to do a hard and fast administration of the ordinance over 5 square feet, 10 square feet, 15 square feet, whatever, and somebody loses a unit, which may or may not be the difference between the project working or not, then everybody's gonna look at me as zoning administrator and say, why didn't you work with them? But Kristen does make a good point that it does put a fair amount of latitude in the hands of your zoning administrator on this issue, and we do have the option of the Board of Zoning Appeals addressing it. It'll slow a project down a little bit by about 6 weeks to go through that process, but that is a very viable possibility. The only comment I would make is if we go that route, we probably need to add a quickie little line of language into the BZA section that specifically calls out the board's authority to entertain variances for this.
Well, that sounds like a compromise, right?
I mean, I just think they should go to BZA. It's just odd to me that you grant that latitude. Somebody's definitely gonna end up at some point. It's no different than the one we had about the person that had the ladder on the roof or whatever it was. One person says, hey, and I said at that time, if we're going to give staff rules to prescribe, in these cases, then those are the rules they should prescribe. Somebody's upset with those rules, and they come to us because the rules aren't, accommodating, but they do have an outlet of the BZA in which to exercise a request. And I think anything less than that, you're gonna say 370 to one person, and then you're gonna say no to 369 somewhere else because they didn't have the right ratio, and somebody's gonna, why'd you say yes to 370, you won't say yes to my 369, I don't,
Well, unfortunately, when you don't give staff any kind of latitude, and they do have to go to the BZA, then the only way to get satisfaction if they don't get it there is to appeal to the courts. They don't come to us. So this at least gives staff the ability, and I have faith in our staff, that they use that ability in the correct way, to be able to garner a decision that makes common sense and economic sense. I also believe that staff, if there was ever any questions, are smart enough to know that, they aren't going to give anybody any latitude if, it's gonna cause any kind of harm to, either other property owners or the city of Hagerstown. So I believe having the ability for staff to be able to do that, I think, is a good thing.
yeah, I just wanna set a number. If that's the route we're going, I would like a number.
Kristen and I discussed 15%.
Are you guys okay with 15%?
I mean, it's just, is that what you think, Steve? I mean, is that a,
I think that would cover most circumstances.
fine.
Okay. Compromise.
Good thing.
Yeah.
The last item I think I had was on page 10, the additional language related to the development of mobile home parks. And I think in our discussion, you had indicated that, and I guess I just never knew this, but if somebody wants to put a mobile home on an existing lot, they can do so as long as it's on a permanent foundation. That's my understanding, correct?
In our residential districts, yeah, we're not talking about a lot in mobile home, we're talking about a lot in the city.
However, if someone wanted to own and operate a mobile home park, I want to make sure understand this clearly, do they have to place each of those structures on a foundation just like they would if they were just doing one on a specific lot?
No, in a mobile home park, there's no requirement for a permanently enclosed foundation. And at that point, it's not really a mobile home park, because you're not parking it. If you're gonna put a permanent foundation under it, it's essentially a subdivision at that point.
And then I'll just say as flatly as I can, I'm opposed to mobile home parks being constructed or placed in the city in that context. I don't think that they have an appropriate place within the city at this point, especially given the degree to which, and the economies of scale, frankly, to which construction processes have moved to allow such structures. If we can say that, hey, on this lot, you can have this type of housing structure, but you have to put it on a certain type of foundation, I don't know why we wouldn't say that and require that for all housing types of a similar nature in all places where they're implemented. And I get at that point, they're not really a mobile home, but I just don't think that the mobile appearance and the skirting and stuff, I don't think that has a place in our development and residential perspective any longer.
And to develop on that a little bit for everyone's information, these regulations were amended, I want to say probably about 5 years ago or so, maybe a little bit more than that. And it was a result of two things. One, someone had moved a mobile home into the city, put it on a lot. There was nothing in our ordinance at the time that said you could not do that, and you still can. But it was literally pull the mobile home in, put the skirting up, and we thought it had a deleterious effect on the neighborhood. So the provision said that if you're gonna find a lot in the city, an outlot in our residential zoning districts, if you're gonna use a mobile home as a form of housing on it, you're gonna put it on the foundation, at least, so we don't have that skirting issue in our neighborhoods. As far as mobile home parks were always kind of a gray area in our zoning ordinance, and of course, we all think of the mobile home parks that we have around, that have been around for 50 years, probably don't look the best. What happened is since it really wasn't clearly defined or addressed in our ordinances, we adopted at the time where mobile home parks are a permitted use in the RH zoning district. It's just one zoning district. And also there were a list of design expectations of a mobile home park as far as distance the building has to be from the interior roads, exterior property lines, landscaping buffers around the edges of the property, parking, can't have sheds on the individual lots, the whole long list that were basically adopted from the mobile home design standards that were in effect at the time that we culled from Howard County's zoning ordinance. So the thought is if somebody wanted to do a mobile home park bad enough, then it's gonna be a really nice looking mobile home park. But the reality is that there's very few RH zone raw land properties in the city. We put it in the ordinance because our general philosophy is that you really need to address everything in your zoning ordinance, even if it may never be used. So that's where we're at. We do have provisions in the ordinance for mobile home parks and how they are designed. As a practical matter, will we see one? I seriously doubt it.
Are there density provisions for a mobile home park?
There's minimum lot area per pad site requirements, I believe.
And I think a minimum acreage for the entire tract.
That sounds right too, yeah.
But is there a maximum number you can have per acre on that tract?
It would be a function of the minimum size of the individual pad site and then whatever roads and all that need to provide access into them. But we don't set like an X number per acre, no, but you would end up backing into one that way.
Where is the RH raw land in Hagerstown?
There's one down on Heb Road. There's one at the end of Haven Road. There's probably one or two more that are escaping me at the moment. Is there any map?
Sorry, Steve.
It's like we're talking to Steve in the 1950s.
That's what I was saying. I was like, the history buff in literally.
I mean, he is a black
back
and
in
white, I
history.
mean.
I know, it's very,
Looks like
For some
we're
reason, it's glad you're
remaking
here.
Mr. Ed.
He's
Yeah, we
anything but
We
generic.
got
that's
Heaven
for sure.
Everett is one. Haven Road is another. And that doesn't take into account that, we may end up annexing some property around the edges at some point that may be RH zone. But chances are when they're annexed, the developer already knows what they want to do with it. I'm not seeing another jump out at me. Kathy, do you remember any?
No, I think we were down to just about that.
City Park.
Yeah.
You're talking about the property at the end of Haven Road that's got the large house, right?
It's the Haven Road annexation tract is RH.
So if you drive the back of the end of Haven Road, there's that house there on the left, it's the white one, it's got the lane that goes in, just past J.J.'s tower, right?
Kind of, yeah, and you go, the
Goes out
existing
the
Haven Road
track.
dead ends in an apartment complex right now. That land has a lot of strings attached to it that were part of the annexation.
But that's
The land
area
on
you're
the
talking
left of Haven or on the south side of Haven as you head back is zoned R-Mod. It's not RH.
The Jordan land is RH, but the developed land is different.
Right, it's across the street, it's across Haven Road.
The wooded tract back there.
Yeah, I know exactly which land you're talking about. I think the city taxes on that house are like $6,000 a year.
And that's not part of that tract.
No, I'm talking about the house that would be adjoining then to that development that could occur.
Are we talking about like the 150-year-old house that I think has a pool in the backyard?
Yep.
It's on the south side of Haven?
Yep.
Okay, that's Armad.
Right.
And that is, there's a little bit of RH to the north of that
That's right.
before you get to Haven, but my understanding is that that would probably be some sort of forest con area if the area ever did develop. It's just not enough room there to do anything with. The back side of that property that Councilmember Alshire describes it's a split jurisdiction property. The house itself is in the city, but I believe the back side of the property is still in the county.
Oh, yeah, we had to re-annex that area because of it.
Terribly complicated to develop. Do you have anything else?
No, I just think they should be on foundations.
And what's actually proposed for a revision is just modification to the buffering language.
Are you guys okay with it? Or,
You okay with the modification of the buffering language?
I am.
Yeah.
I would, yes,
Yeah.
modify the buffering language.
okay. Anyone else have any
Anything else?
input for Steve?
I think
That's,
All right.
that's all I have. So it looks like we're gonna hold off on the gambling establishments. We're gonna make the change to that reduction of the building units, the dwelling unit size. And otherwise, everything was okay.
Yes,
Okay.
sounds good.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Swirly, like.
All right,
picture
up
of-
next, Invest Hagerstown City Center redevelopment grant application for 170 West Washington Street.
Hello again. I am here once more on behalf of the review committee for the property at 170 West Washington Street, currently known as the Nicodemus House, with a application from Pat Grace for our Invest Hagerstown City Center redevelopment grant program. For this request, Pat is requesting a grant amount of $250,000 from our City Center grant program with an estimated total project cost of $1.1 million. The review committee is recommending the total grant request of $250,000 that will go towards a great development of 9 fully renovated one-bedroom residential units and 1 commercial unit at the front first floor. Some features of this property would be off-street paved parking, secure access into the building for those tenants with security cameras, free Wi-Fi, energy efficient lighting and appliances, and things of that nature. For this specific property, right now, a student housing proposal has been submitted by 170 West Washington Partners and Pat Grace. For the current student housing RFP, negotiations are on their way and agreements are in progress, and the agreement would include an award of $100,000 of student housing development incentives through the State Community Legacy Foundation.
Are you guys okay with the application?
Repaint it, do whatever you want.
You're good?
Yeah?
Yeah. You guys are good? Good to go.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, city sponsorships.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here today to follow up on a conversation that we started last October regarding FY21 funding levels for city sponsorships. At that time, you requested that we come back after January 1st to review the remaining sponsorship requests for this fiscal year. So as a recap, the total budgeted amount for FY21 sponsorships is $41,500. To date, we have expended $2,000, and the remaining requests total $8,000. And those include the Tour of Washington County Bike Race, the BISFA annual sponsorship, Maryland Entertainment Group's Shakespeare in the Park, and donation to the auxiliary police. So we just seek your direction on how to fund those last 4 requests.
So at least 31,500, and it would, we're only expending another 8.
Correct.
So
So it'd be
10,000 total.
10 out of 41.5,
Leave 31.5 left over.
correct.
Oh, I'm good.
Good? Good?
Yep.
Okay.
One down.
Imagine Hagerstown.
So, here, just to give a recap of what happened in 2020, which most of you probably know, and also seek direction on FY '22, Imagine Hagerstown events. So recap of 2020 activities, like every other event across the world, we had to quickly pivot to accommodate the pandemic. We had originally planned 4 Fourth Friday events and a full-day Saturday festival. We did not do that, obviously, but we did do some, which was pretty good. We did a live stream on June 12th, with big thanks to Eric and Wes in communications for making it actually happen. We had 2 Fourth Friday events at University Plaza, July 24th and August 28th, mostly as planned, with the exception that we did not have food and beer trucks because we didn't want people congregating. And we had one more final live event at University Plaza on September 26th, which happened instead of the street festival, just to kind of slim it down a little bit and keep it from getting big. We have 2 more events in this fiscal year, May 28th and June 25th, featuring the bands that were going to perform last May and June, so we're really lucky that they were able to just, I shouldn't say we're really lucky, every band was looking for a gig, to be honest, but they were able to accommodate our schedule. So we have Kelly Bell Band coming on May 28th, and the Amish Outlaws on June 25th. Moving to FY '22, there's kind of 3 things that we're looking for direction on, and I'll just kind of go through all 3 of them, and then you can kind of, because they kind of go together. One is the scope of what the events are going to be. I've got 2 options for you. 2 is the selecting the venues for the events, and the third area is just approval to commit some or all of the funds. Because to plan these events, you need to contract in advance of the fiscal year. So, in terms of scope, option A would be what we had planned for last year, which didn't happen, 4 Fourth Fridays and 1 Saturday festival. Option B would be to do 5 Fourth Friday events, and this really would just be to save money, because it would just be cheaper. A street festival or a full-day Saturday festival costs more money in a lot of areas. So that's option A. Option B, just so in case you're not familiar, the Fourth Friday events, all scheduled to take place in University Plaza, July, August, September of this 2021, and then the following June 2022, 5 to 8 p.m. There'd be an opening act and a headliner, and assuming that COVID health guidelines permitted, we would have food vendors, and we would either do the BYOB scenario or find a partner to do the liquor license. The Saturday festival would, for this coming fiscal year, schedule it for late May or early June, which gives as much time as possible for the pandemic to go. It'd be scheduled to be a full day, 12 to 8 p.m., multiple bands, demonstrations, other performances, interactive experiences like fitness classes or walking tours, kids activities, artisan vendors, food vendors, again, a BYOB or find a partner to hold a liquor license, and it would sort of serve as the kickoff for the calendar year 22 season. And the option that comes in here is where to place the Saturday festival. See, I keep calling it street festival because that's what was planned last year. Option 1 would be put it in University Plaza, which is not as visible as South Potomac Street, but it has so many advantages. It already has a stage, it already has fencing, it has plenty of electricity, which is spread throughout the plaza. It has a green room and restrooms for the artists. It's easier for staff and volunteers to monitor comings and goings and capacity. South Potomac Street, very visible, but has other challenges. Need to build a stage, need to erect fencing, need to identify enough volunteers or staff to monitor the multiple entry and exit points, and there are definitely limitations to where the electricity is on the street. The third area is just approval to commit funds for FY22 in advance of July 1. So the partial ask for either option would be $20,200. The full ask for option A would be $52,000. Option B, the sort of 5 Fourth Fridays, would be $36,100. So I'm happy to take questions or have you discuss.
For me, hi Kitty, good to see you in person.
Hey, yeah.
For me, I would prefer and not just because of the cost savings, but because of the consistency, the 5 4th Fridays and keeping it in the University Plaza. I just think that there's, again, just the consistency of it and people getting excited. And then if we change it and have a festival, I just think that's just my opinion for it, so.
I agree, I like the five Fridays and keeping it in University Plaza as well.
So I actually disagree with that, and only because we've all been locked in our houses for a year, and I feel like an all-day festival is a much-needed release for everyone.
But that's not until 2022, right? That's what we're talking?
I was thinking to put it off
Right.
until spring of '22, which,
Yeah.
when I think hopefully would be past, because who knows what's going to happen next winter. We won't talk about that today.
But this would be under the fiscal year 22 budget.
It would still be FY '22, yeah.
I just like that,
Well,
like,
okay, we'll probably be more free by then, so,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
I freaking hope so.
You just want to go out. I know.
Yeah.
I get it, I understand, we all
I
do,
just-
but I
I
just
just
like
think the bigger the better
consistency.
right now, because we've all been so,
I know.
locked
I like that
away.
we're talking about it.
Well, I just want to make sure there's no super spreader.
well, of course not.
I just like I think that it'd be nice to have it known, like, okay, we have these 4th Fridays and just keep going with that, just to develop some kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm fine with
And all in University Plaza?
4. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
easily controlled.
Seems
plenty of
easy.
electricity.
It is much easier than closing off the street and fencing off a non-festival area, for sure. So
Okay.
5 4th Fridays,
Yeah.
no street, no Saturday festival at this point.
Not at this point.
Okay, and then, committing funds, full or partial so I can start contracting?
Thoughts?
It would be 20,000 or 30, what is it, 36?
I would say full, but
I would say both.
you good? Yes? Yes.
That's fine.
Thank you. That makes my life really a lot easier.
Good.
That's what we're here for, Kitty.
Okay, great.
Go plan stuff, yeah.
Yeah, now I can go plan stuff.
Yes,
Okay.
that's fun. That's a
It
fun
is-
time.
it is fun, right?
Yeah,
I don't get to
good.
perform anymore.
Okay,
August Oktoberfest.
August Oktoberfest. So, we are here today really just to give you some information and awareness that the city and the August Oktoberfest Charitable Foundation are working together to figure out how to produce this event ongoing in downtown. And for this coming year, August 2021, it is envisioned that the event will be supported in generally the same way as in previous years, with little to no change. However, both the city and the August Oktoberfest Foundation are facing resource challenges, both fiscal and personnel challenges. And we are in discussions now so that over the next 18 months, ahead of the FY '23 August Oktoberfest, we can work out an arrangement that works for both entities with regards to resource challenges. Additionally, city staff are working to align all events with a consistent model, and we have been drafting an event guidebook that we hope to bring to you soon for review and approval. We are exploring how to evolve the August Oktoberfest event into this model. Finally, we're looking into grant opportunities that could provide funds to be used for event evaluation and future planning. There are a lot of things still to work through, a lot of questions, and we are happy to come back and update you as more is known and develops. And we're certainly not looking for any answers today. We really just wanted you to know that we're in conversation.
Yeah.
Any questions?
It's just important to keep this
It-
event. you know?
Absolutely.
It's so, I think, a staple event for our community, so whatever that means.
Well, unfortunately, I have to agree, when you look at the people who've been involved in August Oktoberfest all these years, it's it's kind of reminiscent of Blues Fest and, you know, the Jim Kirchhoffs and those kind of people who have done it for the last 20 years plus, so. You know, Eric Dykey, who's, you know, probably tired of putting the fence up. But anyway, but I know he would do it no matter what, so.
Well, yeah, I definitely don't want to see another Blues Fest situation where key people leave and the event falls
Right,
apart, because this is
right.
very important
We
for
don't-
our community, and it's a great partnership, so.
Yep.
And if you
Just
rely on the
figure
same
out-
the same people and the same volunteer, I mean, it gets exhausting, but, I mean, we do have, I go back to it consistently, we do have a youth advisory council.
I was just gonna say that.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
honest to goodness, I was just gonna say.
I should, yeah, I'll let Bob say it, but we do, you know, like, we should probably
Right,
figure out how to get them
having them
involved.
reach out, having them be
Yeah,
involved.
yeah.
That's a great
They're
idea.
young and vibrant and ready
They
to do.
can carry the torch, yep.
Yeah, so, give
Great.
Eric a break.
That's good. We will-
See how nice I am, Eric?
Put the kids to work.
I got your
Mr. Usher's got a basketball team.
I'm nice.
You guys have anything to add? No. All right, next we have the noise ordinance exception.
Oh, it's a kitty show today.
So, I was here last month, or not here, I was there on the screen last month, to get the, street closure for the Barbara Ingram, Arts Festival they're doing on the street. There's your street festival. May 14th, rain date of May 21st. Like the very next day, they contacted me, they said, oh, we're gonna have a band and we're gonna have amplifiers. So, this is really just a noise ordinance exemption for that event.
Yep.
Good?
Yep.
Great. It'll be on your vote at the end of the month.
While you're here, I
Yeah.
just wanted to tell you, I got an email earlier from some people who have been working with you on a festival idea, and they said you have been absolutely fabulous to work with. So just wanted to say thank you.
I will say, just, I've gotten a lot of phone calls and emails in the last probably 3 weeks of people just like, clearly people are ready to do stuff. And so they're like, what can we do? Are we allowed to do this? Can we do this? What about this? Can we use this place? So it is kind of exciting. And we do need to get the event guidebook done. Because people today were like, could you send me that all in writing? And I was like, okay. So that should be work for us. Yay.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kitty.
All right, up next, public protection classification. My favorite, insurance service
Yeah, I
office
like to take
ratings. Both of my worlds are colliding.
15 minutes long or 50 minutes?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm glad this is your favorite, especially since we're at the tail end. The Chief Laura and I were approached by the folks, ISO folks, to actually look at having it's that time of 5-year, I guess, isn't it? So they contacted us, and Steve contacted me and said, you know, Nancy, this is really important. We really need to step up and try to get reclassified. That, you know, there's a lot of benefit from an economic development standpoint. There's benefit from a water system standpoint, and so on and so forth. So over the last month or so, that's what we've been doing. We've been putting together a game plan, looking at our scores from 2008 and 2015, just to kind of see where we were, where we improved, where we slid backwards. In this particular circumstance, the water department actually slid backwards a little bit from 2008 to 2015. So, you know, we're looking at all of that. We were talking to the folks at the with ISO, and we think we've put together a pretty good game plan. And I'm going to let Fire Chief talk about all of, you know, what about the protection classification and all of that stuff. That's really his strong point, not my strong point. He lives and breathes that every day. What I want to touch on first is more as it pertains to the water system. As it may sound a little odd, but I actually am kind of excited about moving forward with this because it'll give us some extra tools in our toolbox. Hazen and Sawyer, our engineers that maintain our hydraulic model. When we fire flow test 20% of the hydrants in the system, it'll allow them to fully calibrate our hydraulic model. That model will be calibrated so that not only it'll meet the needs of the system for development and that sort of thing when we're looking at what we need where, but it'll also be calibrated to meet the ISO standards. So then moving forward, we can retest out in the system, but they will actually, ISO will then accept our hydraulic model as as fact of how our water system works. So I'm kind of excited about that because while our model is calibrated, it's not calibrated to this level. We have 5 pressure zones. We have a little over 2,200 hydrants in our system. So we'll look at 20% of the hydrants in each zone and at least 25% of the hydrants as a whole. About 50% of our customer base is on our base zone, our zone 1. And then the remainder of our customer base is, of course, spread across the other zones. It goes without saying, with being a regional water system, there's benefit to the community as a whole and not just inside municipal limits, and I think that's important too. To the extent possible, we will be reaching out to our consecutive systems, Funkstown, Williamsport, and Smithsburg, to see if they need anything from us, and if they do, what is it, and can we reasonably assist them since we are their wholesale water providers. We have not done that yet, but we will as we begin to work through this. Next month, I will have a proposal from Hazen and Sawyer that it'll be on the consent agenda to look at doing these updates, both to our hydraulic model, both from a water system standpoint and from a fire protection standpoint. Like I said, I think it's a win-win. It's really my hope that working together that we can get from a class 3 to a class 2. And with that, I'm going to let Steve turn it over to Steve.
I have no intent of running through the 2015
Thank you.
PowerPoint summary out of respect of time. So I included in the packet for the benefit of the new council members that were not here in 2015. So the fire department is very excited that we're working as collaboratively with the water department to get this done. So the ISO public protection classification has been the gold standard for fire protection since the turn of the previous century, when conflagrations were common in large municipal cities, the Great Baltimore Fire, the Great Chicago Fire, the San Francisco earthquake, and dozens of others in towns as small as Peshtigo, Wisconsin. So nonetheless, it is in the community's best interest to have a low rating. 1 is the best, 10 is the worst. 10 is if you are more than 5 miles from a fire station, you're an automatic 10, there's nothing you can do about it. Certainly, we do not fall under that category. Thanks to Mayor and Council, in my tenure here, you've made regular investments in not only the fire department, but the city to narrow this gap. I have a long-standing rule, don't do math in public, but even in my head, I can figure out we have to move about 6 points on a scale of 100 to get to a Class 2. There's only a handful, less than 4 Class 2 fire departments in the state of Maryland. And I believe the city of Hagerstown can be one of those. It's going to be close, and it's going to be close because of COVID. You'll hear from Chief Kleck and I next week that we rolled out a pre-planned inspection program at the beginning of last year, only to be interrupted by COVID. So points we were counting on for there, we will not get full credit for, but the regular investments you've made, backup redundant communication systems, water department, vehicles and equipment, we will, we'll get awful close if we don't get there at this time. It's normal practice for the ISO to come into any town USA once every 5 years and do a rating that allows insurance agents to reduce the hazard portion of your, particularly commercial insurance. I'm not a subject matter expert there, but generally for each class you improve, that can reflect up to about a 3.5 or 4% reduction in your insurance rates. That's not insignificant for the type of development we're pursuing here in the city. So I'm excited about this. I'm hopeful we can get there with our recordation. Just a couple months ago, you approved a records management system that the fire department never had. We are currently implementing that. And that recordation alone, as Nancy spoke about, is going to help us get there. So I think I'll stop there. We need to move a little under 7 points, and you'll hear more about what we're doing in our strategic plan update next Tuesday from the fire department standpoint. But on a grand scale, out of 100 points, 50 belong to the fire department, 40 belong to the water department, and 10 belong to the communication system that alerts the fire department. So in each of those categories, we're going to see improvement. I am absolutely confident of that. And I fully endorse Nancy's request to upgrade the Hayes and Williams project for hydraulic calculations. Fire department's fully committed. 20% of hydrants in a 2,300 hydrant system is no small task. We have committed our full resources of on-duty folks to help flow test those hydrants, and I believe their goal is 20% in each pressure zone.
Correct.
So that's going to take more than a minute, but I'm also certain that we can get it done, working together, and just excited about it. So I'll take questions if you have any.
I got a couple.
Okay.
Real quick. In the report, it looks like when you mentioned the point system, I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Let me get to the right page.
Kristen, do you have the 2008 report or the 2015?
I'm looking at the 08 report, and while you mentioned that, 50 points are for the fire department, 40 points are for water supply, and then 10 points for communication or percent, whichever you want to call it. And if you look at that report, a couple of the places we got low marks appear to be, I want to make sure I understand it correctly, are in areas that we don't directly control, meaning it talks about communications systems.
Yes.
But if I understand it correctly, we sort of defer that communications system integrity to a third party, i.e. the county.
Absolutely.
So-
You're correct. But we have worked collaboratively. I don't have the 08 report in front of me. I will tell you that there was about 2.5 points that we did not achieve in 15 that would be buried in that PowerPoint summary. And two major issues. For whatever reason, and I'm not going to declare it's the county's fault, but there were not backup diagrams of the emergency generators that support the emergency communication center primary and secondary. Number two is, for whatever reason, and this quite possibly was on the city's end, we had the circuits exactly backwards. So the primary alerting circuit for city stations, and I believe countywide, but for sure in the city, was internet-based, and the backup was hardwired, and they needed to be flip-flopped. We did that in the first year I was here. It wasn't a tremendous expense, it was a few dollars, you all funded it, it's done. So I think when you start adding up those little things and we start chipping away at 2.5 points here, 1 point there, 3 points there, that we're gonna move 7 points.
And that's my question on the communication side. It looks like what they were looking for from last report was an improvement in redundancy capability. And so if we've done that, we get that, but we defer sort of to the county, collaborative, we defer to the county to sort of make sure that happens, so we're dependent on a third party for that. The second question I had was in relation to the water systems operation, because in the 2021 briefing, it speaks to Hagerstown, Fairplay, Halfway, Leitersburg, Longmeadow, and Morgansville. And I guess I'm making an assumption that our classification that we're trying to achieve for the municipal boundaries of the city would speak directly, as it relates to the water component of the report, to just the stations of our responsibility. In other words, I'm assuming that they're not basing the qualification capability of those other stations that we may have water to our report, because we don't have any control over sort of how well Fairplay can, you know, accommodate, or Mogul, those areas outside of the city. I wouldn't want that to sort of have an impact on.
So it does not, I will tell you,
Okay.
it's a little complex, but we get credit for what's in the municipal boundary. Everything from response times to flow testing of hydrants, to how many personnel we assemble, which is a big one on a fireground.
All right, so it doesn't count personnel capability and water capability out for those stations that aren't city stations?
It does, they want to see that, because, for instance, we're first arriving in the Robinwood Quarter. That's only going to get worse. That's the other urban area, the only other urban area in Washington County besides within the municipal boundary. And it's one of the reasons that I lobbied so hard for the automatic aid agreement. So prior to that automatic aid agreement, we did not get credit for personnel who responded from Funkstown, Mount Etna, Smithsburg, Long Meadow, whatever, on our fairgrounds towards an effective response force.
Because there's no obligation.
Pardon me?
Because there was no obligation.
That's correct. Now that we have that in place, and, big and, we have a records management system that can verify that we turned out 23 people on a fairground.
We get to count the personnel and count the redundant equipment they're looking to see.
Yes.
It's kind of what it reads here.
Exactly.
Okay.
And all those things, I am hopeful, will carry the water, no pun intended, on review day, right?
Getting those 7-point trade.
Okay.
One of the things too, that I want to add from the water side, when we were talking with the folks at ISO, there was, I'm going to call it a request, if you will, to make sure that we represent the entire water system. And of course, our emphasis will be on what I'm going to call our base zone, but there was, it was not lost on any of us that we needed to look at the entire water system. And I think that goes back to commitment to your water system. One of the things that I'll add that I think will help on the water side and will likely help on the fire side is, and something we haven't previously done, we'll be pulling the accounts, if you will. We won't be providing any account data, but we'll be providing addresses for, we have to identify kind of fire protection needs based on meter size, if you will. So we've never been asked to do that before. So we'll be looking at our fire line accounts, and we'll be looking at our large meter accounts, 6-inch and larger, because we want to make sure in those areas where they have some really, really high figures that they represent what's there, what's actually there today, and that they also acknowledge, you know, if you will, existing fire protection piping that serves those facilities. So we'll be working on, you know, and that, to me, that goes back to also to the commitment to the water system as it pertains to fire protection. But so we'll be working to pull those reports as well. I'm really, there's nothing I would like to see better than 100%, but I absolutely want to get back to where we were in the 2008 report at 36.5, because we dropped down to 32.5. So truly want to get 100% of those points back, and, you know, if we can get a point or more higher, you know, point or more, that just helps us to get that much closer, or perhaps to the 2. So.
Certainly Jill's group, I think it's a big selling point for any community when you're recruiting economic development, and somebody wants to come in and pick up a building like the old Antietam Paper Company building that was previously considered very high risk because it's unsprinklered, et cetera, et cetera. That affords an opportunity, you know, 3.5% savings towards your insurance premiums year after year after year. It's a big deal. So we're gonna make this a big deal. This evaluation is in process as we speak. From the fire department perspective, we're about 65% done of what they need. And then our focus will be on the water supply as the weather turns in our favor. And I would hope no later than the fall, we'll have a rating.
Do you guys have any additional questions?
That's very interesting.
Good. Thank you guys very much. This is definitely important for homeowners and for business owners.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Administrator.
I got a half hour to catch up on. I just have a couple of things, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank staff that all of us congregated at Robinwood last week as part of the 1B vaccination process. So there were over 100 staff that were able to get vaccinated with the Janssen Pharmaceutical Johnson & Johnson vaccine. All told, between staff and public safety, about 60% of the staff have received at least one shot. If you got the Pfizer, Moderna, most of us got the Johnson & Johnson, which is one shot, so we're still a week away from full vaccination. Any additional staff that are going to want to get vaccinated will go through the regular process through the MyChart or through what I call pharmacy roulette, Walgreens, CVS, Martin's, to get an appointment to get vaccinated. But I want to thank staff that did that. As a result, we are opening the lobby back up Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We started this week on Monday. Appreciate the public that came in. We saw about 55, 60 people yesterday come into City Hall and transact business in the lobby. Everybody was doing the right thing. We had no problems down there. We'll do it again Wednesday and Friday of this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday the next, and then we'll go 5 days a week, 8 to 4, beginning, I think it's the 23rd, I think is that Monday. And we will begin initiating, at this point, unless there's changes, service cuts for non-payment, those that have not had payment arrangements or contacted agencies by that time. We'll start those on April 1st per PSC guidelines. The last thing I'll just mention is participated today in the National League of Cities annual conference virtually. And one of the topics was the American Recovery Act, which is what Phase 3 of CARES, that will be providing a significant amount of money to state, county, local governments. Every municipality in the country will receive some amount of money based upon, I believe that it's per capita income or CDBG statistics. We will obviously be one of those. And just to let folks know that we'll know more in the next day or so if and when that gets approved by the House. But that Michelle Hepburn and I have been talking about this for, months now, as to a plan that we will bring to you. So not only will we have the budget, the budget to present to you beginning in April, but we'll also have thoughts on the use of this American Recovery Act money that we will bring to you. That is one-time funds used to supplement fund balance that was used to get through what little we did. Thank goodness, we were prepared to get through this, and we're able to, thanks to some of the money that came earlier in the second CARES Act, second or third CARES Act release. But we will be presenting to you at some point in the near future how we're going to use this money from this last approved act that we'll get the funds from. It's going to be across all funds. It's not just general fund. It'll be utilities as well, because we all were affected. All the funds were affected in this pandemic, and We're gonna look to some infrastructure needs that we are going to try to take care of, that are in desperate need of being taken care of, and then look at some innovative ways, I think, that we've talked about to help out the community and help out staff as well. So that'll also be something you'll hear about in the very near future, if not, imminently. And also, the governor did speak today. He is opening up restaurants, indoor, outdoor capacity to 100%, still masking and social distancing. Theaters, sporting venues are 50% at this time, which is going to be a huge benefit to the Maryland Theater to be able to reopen for some of their, not just their weddings and smaller events, but also maybe get the auditorium back open, which will be huge for them. And I can't give enough appreciation to the staff of the Maryland Theater on how they've been able to keep the lights on there. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Councilmember Alshire?
I have nothing this evening.
Councilmember Burnett?
No, no comments, thank you. Yes. Since the governor has opened up to 100%, which is for restaurants and such, and the weather is turning, can we consider closing Potomac like we did? Why?
No,
Really?
we can't. I knew that was going to come from. I knew you were going to ask that.
I mean, because it was sunny outside
Yes,
today, so I was
yes.
like, wait a second.
Yep.
So we can be maybe proactive about it, and, because there will be individuals that aren't comfortable with going inside, so,
And maybe add some entertainment this time.
and maybe add some entertainment this time. Ooh,
Yeah,
Scott.
we're gonna talk
thank
about
you.
that.
Awesome, thank you.
I have a couple things. One, we got a request for a letter of support. It's attached on your desk here. It's for I-81. Are you guys okay with sending this?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And then this is our first meeting since the State of the City. If you weren't one of the 150 or so people that joined through the Chamber's Zoom last week, I just wanted to say thank you to Wes and Eric again, and to you guys for participating, for the businesses that participated, and it is up online, so please check it out if you haven't already. It's gotten a really positive response, which I think is what we all need right now. And lastly, I Zoomed with Miss Doe's fourth graders today for the If I Were a Mayor contest, and there was a couple people very concerned that I don't have a bodyguard or a personal police officer, and I just wanted to reiterate to them that I am doing just fine and I made it through the day. So with that, we're adjourned. You guys have a good evening.
Welcome to Council Wrap. I'm Wes Decker, and I told somebody in a radio interview this week, I said in previewing the council meeting for today that we had a quality individual in our community events coordinator, Kitty Clark, who would be also the queen of quantity on this particular agenda, having half of the items, 4 of the 8, Kitty. And, you know, let's start with that first one, which was sort of a return agenda item when it comes to the sponsorships. And that went through pretty easily. You know, what was your feeling coming into that? Did you have any feel for how the council might react to that?
I don't know if I exactly had a feel, but because the dollar amount had decreased so much since last fall.
Yeah.
And so much from what the budgeted, you know, amount is for this fiscal year, I really was having a hard time thinking they were going to find a problem with it.
Yeah, which is obviously a good thing for everybody.
It's good for there's 3 more events that are in our sponsorship, you know, roster, if you will. And then our annual donation to the auxiliary police, which we like to give because they are at almost every event that happens in Hagerstown, working tirelessly as volunteers. So I like to make that contribution to them. I mean, I think, you know, Bob Brucci pointed out, you know, he's like, so we're just spending another $8,000, so a total of 10 out of 41.5. And I'm like, that's right. He goes, so 31.5 extra. I'm like, that's correct. He goes, yeah, okay, what's, you know, I think people are so hungry, not just the council, not just me, but like everybody out there is so eager to have things happen, to have events of any kind, that, you know, putting a couple $1,000s into some events is almost a no-brainer.
Yeah, really 2 things going for you there. Number 1, the math that you pointed out certainly worked out. And number 2, that, and you know, City Administrator Nicewarner mentioned it in his comments at the end about Governor Hogan's press conference today, where he made his announcements about, you know, rolling back restrictions, opening things up a lot more. And, you know, by the time we get to some of these events, perhaps, you know, we're even opened up more beyond what he discussed today. But one of the things that Governor Hogan said in his press conference was, you know, as individuals, we're thinking back to the last time. What was the last time that we did something that ultimately we really took for granted for a long period of time, which has been taken away from us by this pandemic for the last year at least. So now we're sort of looking forward to doing things that we took for granted for the first time again. So it's really a rebirth in a way, and that's not to overstate it. And I think, you know, some of the groundwork that I want to lay here with you as my guest today is, you know, when we look at your job title, Community Events Coordinator, I think a lot of people look at that and go, man, that sounds like a lot of fun. And I'm sure there are a lot of fun facets to the job, but there are also a lot of things that you need to do behind the scenes, because what people appreciate in what you ultimately facilitate and help to make happen in the city are those things, like you mentioned, that they go out and they enjoy, and they enjoy them because all of those things come together. All of the dots are connected along the way. So can you provide a little bit of a sense of what you do? I know events are different, but kind of what you do behind the scenes a little bit, just to give people an idea of what it is, those strings you sort of pull to make all of that happen.
Yeah, I mean, talking about, so these sponsorships, these are, you know, outside event organizers that want to do events downtown or have done events downtown. And so typically they're in contact with me. I'm sort of their main point of contact at the city. Then I work with staff from police, fire, public works, parks, engineering, and HR, just safety liability, just to make sure we check off all the, you know, the boxes. I mean, I spoke with a person today, for example, who wants to start a new event, and he knew nothing. He was just like, well, I want to do it here, and I want to have this. And I was like, well, before we have our meeting, I'll just quickly list a few of the things you'll need to think about. Like, you'll need an assembly permit, you'll need to get a liquor license, you'll need to get an open container exemption, you'll need to get insurance, you'll need to you'll need to, and he was like, do you have that written down? Do you have that written down somewhere? So, you know, I mean, that's typically what we do is I get the information, I sort of chat with the person, get to figure out exactly what they want, what they know, what they don't know. Sometimes they know a lot about the process, and sometimes they're like, oh, there's a liquor board. And then we have, you know, then we convene in meetings to iron out the details of their event and make sure really what it is. I mean, it sounds like a lot of hoops to jump, and, you know, we're gonna get that, you know, bureaucracy label. But really, a lot of it is, we want your event to be successful, and we want your event to be safe. And so giving them, you know, the map to navigate those safety regulations, and then giving them our advice on best practices so they can have a good rollout. But it is a lot. And then, you know, and then for sure, there are things like, if they want a sponsorship, then, you know, there's the whole, like, coming to the mayor and council and checking on, are they comfortable with the sponsorship, you know, amount? Does their event, you know, from our, I work in the Department of Community and Economic Development, so we're looking at events not just because they're fun, although they are fun, but also as a way to generate foot traffic downtown and get people to come to restaurants and other businesses down here. So when we're giving out sponsorships, some of it is also, well, how many people are you gonna have at your event? And, you know, are you having food trucks, or are you gonna encourage people to go to restaurants? And, you know, those kinds of questions, right? And I did just wanna say, since referencing Hogan's press conference today, there are also, the reason that number was 8,000 today for the sponsorships and not 13,000, which was what it was 2 weeks ago, is because 2 events in March not only got canceled last year, they also just had to get canceled this year. So for some events, they're getting the double slam, you know? Yeah. And just those 2 events, because they're important events for our community, the St. Patrick's Day Run, which is a giant event in Hagerstown, like 900 runners, and a fundraiser for the Community Free Clinic, and the Maryland International Film Festival had to get canceled because the Maryland Theater just, you know, until now, didn't have ability to have more than 100 people in there.
Yeah.
So it's sad to see those events, you know, be canceled. The film festival's postponing to August, so hopefully there'll be no 4th wave, right?
No question about it.
Yeah.
I mean, the sooner we can hit that fast forward button and get there to that place that we have been seeking to get to for so long, and I certainly agree with that. You know, another question that I think that people might wonder about is, you know, what is the criteria for when you bring something to mayor and council as it relates to some of those things? I mean, you had 4 of them on the agenda today. I mean, is there certain criteria that says, yes, I present this to mayor and council, or is that a little bit of a gray area? Is it black and white?
Some are really obvious because it's like city code things that we need to get their approval on. So like the noise ordinance that for today for the BISFA Street Festival that's happening. Last month I was here for a street closure for the same reason. That's just city code stuff. And the open container exemptions, that's all just code. It's almost boilerplate, and a lot of that stuff goes on what we call consent agenda, and I don't have to make a big presentation of any kind, right?
Right.
Other things are more nuanced, and it just seems like the sponsorship is a really good example, actually, because I've been in my position a little over 3 years. I've never come to council until this fiscal year to talk about sponsorships, and I think it's purely because of the financial situation that we're all in because of the pandemic. And it was, if the city's gonna spend money when we know everybody's short on money, we better make sure that the elected body knows what's going on. So that's where that came from. And it seems, I actually think that seems good, that's not a bad idea to have the council weigh in on where we're spending money on things that could seem, not, I wouldn't say arbitrary, but, you know, decided by a group of people sitting in a city building somewhere. So I actually don't mind bringing that to them for their information and for their confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the name of transparency,
Yeah.
I mean, that certainly makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Let's get to Imagine Hagerstown, because this has been
That's good.
an evolving festival, right?
It has
I mean,
been.
from the time that this started, from figuring out what the name of it was going to
Yep.
be.
You've seen it, right?
Yeah, what exactly was it going to entail?
Right.
There's been a lot learned over the course of the last
Yeah,
couple of years.
It is really interesting because, you know, last year was supposed to be the year that was like, okay, so now we have this model that we're gonna, this is the model. The
Right,
model's
a little more straightforward, right?
4 Fourth Fridays and a Saturday street festival, and like, you know, last January 2020 and February 2020, boy, did I have like volunteers coming out and like organizing all sorts of stuff, and then it just like, you know, it was like, you know, we pretended to continue to have meetings in April and May, and then finally I said, I don't really see the purpose of our meeting anymore.
Yeah.
It's obvious this isn't gonna happen. So yeah, it's been evolving, and I don't think it's done yet. So if you want to now ask me if I am shocked by something that happened tonight?
Are you shocked by something that happened tonight?
I am, in fact.
What was that, Kitty?
I actually am surprised that that the council directed us to do 5 Fourth Fridays. And to have everything in University Plaza. You know, and, because I thought,
Why did that shock you?
because we had the model that was 4 Fourth Fridays in a street festival.
Right,
And-
because it was different from last year, which we never
We never
truly
did
got
it.
to see play
Yeah,
out
yeah.
in the way that it was drawn up.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I was surprised, but I also think that, and I said this towards the end when I was wrapping up, and Emily said that she'd heard from some people who'd been working with me, and I think that maybe there's going to be other players that come in to start filling in the void of like more festival kinds of events, which is great. Even the BISFA Do What Moves You Street Festival in May is great. It's like, oh, well, they're doing a street festival. Perfect. We can do what we do best, which is we know how to close, we're really good at closing streets and, you know, getting the auxiliary police out there. We're really good at that. So let's do what we can to support them. They're an arts school. Let's let them come out and do an arts event. That's fantastic. And I think, you know, Councilmember McIntyre is saying, let's have some consistency with our events. So it's like people know every 4th Friday, at least in the warm months, right?
Right.
Which I also think is really important.
Yeah, no question about that in my mind. And last year, of course, you know, we started virtually.
Yep.
And heck, we had Josh Morningstar from his home down in Kentucky, as
Yep,
I recall.
that's correct.
And you know, then we ended the way that we had sort of drawn it up to some degree. At least we were in person.
Yes.
We didn't have the full schedule, but as you said, I mean, this year we get a couple of acts that had signed on for last year
Yeah.
coming back this
Yeah.
year, so we'll keep our fingers crossed that everything will stay on schedule.
Right.
Did I hear you say that the first event is coming up? Is that in May?
It's May. It's Memorial Day weekend. It's
Okay.
the Friday of Memorial Day weekend, which happens to be the 4th Friday this year, which I think is actually fun. It's the Kelly Bell Band, which has been out here before and is a very popular band based out of Baltimore. I'm excited. I'm excited just to like have an event, you
Right,
know? Because the last event that we did was the tree lighting, which literally within less than a week, I think in like 4 days, we went from a live event to a virtual event, which was very, you know, like, I can't tell you, and I know every event organizer worldwide is going through this. Pivoting on a dime like that is not easy. There's technology, there's people, there's, you know, who has to wear a mask and what kind of mask, and, you know, it's a lot. And I think, and you and Eric can probably weigh in on this, we've learned a lot about live streaming. You know, it's shortcomings and also the reach it can give us. You know, and we can talk about this another time, but it's like, for these Imagine Hagerstown events, should we also live stream them?
Yeah.
Because there are people, you know, I mean, yes, we want economic impact. We want people who come to the Imagine Hagerstown to also then go have a pizza or get a drink somewhere.
Right.
But they're also great PR for the city.
Yeah, and the funny thing about that is, not to interrupt you, but, you know, last year I remember that once we were able to go live with some of those events, people were actually asking, are you going to be live streaming this too?
Yeah.
So they had gotten to the point where it was like, that is a facet, a component, an element of this.
Yep.
That they're actually asking for.
Yep.
So that may be a good conversation to have down the road to maximize
Yes.
what we do with these events
I think it is.
inside Imagine Hagerstown.
And I dare say that, you know, that people are aching to get back to live performance, but I now suspect that people in the arts and entertainment business are now going to put the metric of how many how many viewers did you have on your, you know, Facebook feed or your YouTube feed or whatever. That's, I think, going to become one of their metrics. You know, is it more work for us? Yes. Will we get better at it? Absolutely. Will it be easier? Yes.
But it definitely quantifies, you know, whether something is popular, it's not popular, maybe you have to tweak something, maybe you don't. Gives you something a little more tangible to go by, like you said, the metrics within.
Yep.
Well, I certainly appreciate you sticking around here after the
Absolutely.
meeting, shedding a little light on what you do,
Uh-huh.
what we can look forward to in the upcoming year. Keep our fingers crossed on that.
Keep our fingers crossed.
You know?
I think it's, if there's no resurgence, if the numbers continue to really go the correct direction, I think that we have a very great year ahead of us in terms of like people coming out and people keep saying like, well, what happened after the 1918 flu pandemic? The 1920s, right? Like, we
Yeah.
need that kind of like roaring, just like, let's do it.
Right,
Right?
and I just want to let people know too, if you're interested in Imagine Hagerstown in particular, there is a Facebook page
There is?
dedicated just to Imagine Hagerstown. Now,
Uh-huh.
on the main city Facebook page, we try to share all of those things that are relevant from our branches that,
Yep.
that sort of, you know, go off from the main page to
Yep.
all the other entities, but there is an Imagine Hagerstown page, so if you're interested in Imagine Hagerstown,
Yep.
like the page, follow the page, all the information's there.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's a great way to keep up with what's happening specifically with that, so I would certainly point people there.
Yep.
Again, appreciate your time this evening,
And-
and hopefully the next time we talk, we can take these off,
I hope so.
and, you know, there won't be any issues.
I'm gonna throw in one more thing, Wes, if I can, which
Sure,
is,
go
you
ahead.
know, just because I have gotten a lot of phone calls in the last couple weeks, if there's anybody out there listening today to this, and you have an idea for a great event downtown, please track me down, because we really want to encourage people to do interesting, fun, exciting things here. And we will work with you to make it so.
And I know that's the case, and I've said this a million times, and people are probably sick of hearing me say this, but there are many, many idea persons out there. The great thing about it is, Kitty is one of those people who can truly make those ideas come to fruition.
Thank you.
Because she coordinates those things, facilitates those things, makes
Yeah.
them happen. So
Yeah.
you give her a good idea, and, you know, you're further ahead of the game than if you're just sitting there going, man, this would be a great idea. So give
Yep.
Kitty a call, get in contact
Yep,
with her.
and a great not support staff, a great staff that also.
Right, but
Yeah.
it all starts right
It
there,
starts
for
with
sure.
me.
It does, it certainly does. Again, appreciate your time here this
Yeah.
evening, appreciate all of you watching. See you after the next work session, right back here on Council Wrap.